In this episode, we get to sit down with Kollin Cockrell, a Team USA gold medalist, Weber State two-time national champion, and an experienced Olympic weightlifter that basically shifted his entire career from going for gold in the Olympics in weightlifting to going for gold in cheer.
For information on today's topic and more, check out thecheerdoc.com. Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8.
Today, guys, I'm super excited to get to bring to you arguably one of the best male cheer athletes in the world right now. And I can say that confidently because he's represented USA on a number of fronts, not just in cheer, actually, in Olympic weightlifting as well. And you guys know how important, strength conditioning and being a well-rounded athlete is to our mission and what we're trying to promote as building a better cheer athlete. So I've been following this guy for a few months. Around the time that Worlds happened this year, I saw a video of Kollin doing, it was this funny thing we were just joking about, where he was going to throw a tumbling pass, and then it kind of cuts away real fast, and somebody else throws this wicked tumbling pass, and then it cuts back to him, and it makes it appear as if he was the one doing the tumbling. And I was like, man, this guy's hilarious. And so I started actually looking into some of his stunt videos, and I mean, I was blown away at his skill level and the things that this guy's doing. And the more that I looked, the more impressed I was at how quality of an athlete that Kollin is. So I could not wait to connect with him and to tell some of his story, let him tell some of his story, and pick his brain just on what it's like to be, one of the top male cheer athletes in the world, and just to kind of get some insight into his life and really introduce him to you guys, because if you're not following this guy, you're missing out. So without further ado, Kollin, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
Yes, Travis, thank you so much. I'm honored that you want to be on your show, and thank you so much, man. I'm so excited to do this.
Well, we gave a brief intro into you and your history with not only cheer, but also with Olympic weightlifting. And I know some of our listeners may not be 100% familiar with what exactly Olympic weightlifting is per se versus, lifting and working out in the gym. So take us through kind of your history, man. Tell us, and before you do, I want to tell you, looking at some of your pictures from your Olympic weightlifting days, I really think that I actually was following you through Hook Grip before I ever knew you were a cheerleader. So, because I know I know Nate Aram that runs Hook Grip, and so I started looking. I said, man, I feel like I've been following this guy longer than I realized. But tell us about your history, man. Tell us about your sports history. Tell us about your weightlifting history, and just kind of lead us up to the decision when you decided to try cheer, and then how things have evolved for you since then.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, man, it's a crazy story how I got into weightlifting. So basically, when I was in middle school, I was a pretty obese kid. I was like one of the typical average kids that, sat home, played video games, just watched TV all day. And, being in a small town that I'm from in Idaho, I wasn't really the most popular kid. I had a lot of people that like to make fun of me, and it wasn't really that fun. And, being in the town I lived in, it was a very small town. So, everybody knew everybody, and it was a pretty farm boy town, a pretty Hickville town that I lived in. So, I wasn't really a in shape kid. So I knew I had to do something about that at that time, but I just really didn't know what was going to be the best solution for me. So when I entered middle school, I started looking into sports and just seeing what sports were out there. And I touched into football. I touched into track, and, I was relatively good at these sports, but I just noticed that I wasn't, having fun, and it wasn't the sport for me, but it was something I really enjoyed doing. So, I just did it just to get in shape mostly. I did sports to get in shape, but sure enough, that led me into, my freshman year in high school, where I started figuring out that, hey, if you are in a sport, that if you add some sort of weight training behind it, it will get you better for your sport. So my freshman year, that's when I got introduced into strength and conditioning class by, one of my mentors, he's a great guy. I still look up to him to this very day. His name is Frank Garrett. So he's the one that introduced me into Olympic lifting and, powerlifting as well. So basically my freshman year through my senior year, that's when I started getting really familiar with like Olympic lifting and powerlifting, and I honestly didn't think I was going to compete into Olympic lifting, like get into Olympic lifting seriously. It's something I really enjoyed, but in my high school, they kept weightlifting records, and I like when I walked in the weight room, I saw all these weightlifting records. There was a squat, bench, clean, snatch, clean jerk, and deadlift, and all I thought was, man, it'd be so cool to get my name up there. And that was my goal at the end of high school. My goal was to at least get my name into that plaque. I just wanted to break one record and just have my name into one of those records. So sure enough, I really took it serious and I started training really hard. And, I used Frank, my strength and conditioning teacher, to help me out. So basically, when I started to get into weightlifting, like serious, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, I found out I was like relatively good at it. Like I was, I had the flexibility, I had the mobility, and I had the coordination to do a proper snatch and a proper clean and jerk. So sure enough, like I started picking it up really quick. And by the time I graduated high school, I told you about the records. By the time I got done with high school, I ended up breaking over 30 records in my high school. So basically, if you go to my high school, but it's called Salmon High School, you'll see my name all over the place in that weight room. So, I was extremely honored to have such a great mentor and a great strength and conditioning teacher that could show me that stuff and teach me Olympic lifting. So basically when that happened, like I would say about my senior year, that's when I got introduced into, competitions, that there's Olympic weightlifting competitions. So when I got introduced to that, I went to a couple of, local competitions, national competitions, when I was getting good. But, it's something I didn't really think I was going to get into by the time I graduated high school. But when I did end up graduating high school, I ended up, making the decision that I wanted to weightlift. And, I heard about that you can do Olympic lifting in the Olympics. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like that's one of my goals I want to do. Like I want to try to shoot for the Olympics. And I graduated high school in 2011. So after, I found out that they have the Olympics for Olympic weightlifting, I thought like that would be such a dream come true, that if I can make the 2016 Olympics. So, I talked to my parents about it. I prayed about it. I did a lot of thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to do. I want to try to make the 2016 Olympics for Olympic weightlifting. So when I graduated in 2011, I went to college at Louisiana State University, Shreveport, and it was a great experience. My 3 years there, like I went to school there and I was training there for about 3 years, and it was a great experience. I did numerous national competitions, and I did my first international competition that was held in Guatemala, and I did another international competition in Reykjavik, Iceland, where I ended up winning that competition, which was, such an amazing experience, and I never thought I would win an international competition in Olympic weightlifting. So, that was a true blessing. And then I did another competition, which surprisingly the cheerleaders are going to go to it right now. I think it's called the FISSU or something like that. That competition, the cheerleaders are going to that this year in Poland. I actually went to that in 2013 for Olympic weightlifting. So that was in Kazan, Russia. So yeah, with that said, I did, 3 international competitions, and I did, numerous national competitions in my first 3 years in college at Louisiana State University, Shreveport. But at the time, like the third year of my third year of weightlifting at Louisiana State University, I noticed that there's some things that weren't working out after I did my third international competition. It's just a bunch of things came up where it wasn't really working out for me. The training was getting where I didn't have the support system I needed to, pursue the Olympics. I just needed a little bit more support and a little bit more guidance to make the Olympics. So, it didn't end up working out, but Louisiana was such a great experience. But I ended up transferring out of Louisiana and transferring over to Boise State University and ended up joining their weightlifting program. And I trained there for about a year, and, Boise State was great. I also competed nationally and did some great things over there. I lifted some great numbers too. But unfortunately, when I was at Boise State, and this was about 2014, like the end of 2014, where I transferred out from Louisiana and went to Boise. Unfortunately, I had an incident when I was training one day. I ended up getting a severe back injury when I was just doing a regular training day, and the back injury really set me back. And it was the end of 2014, and I was like gunning for the Olympics, and I was like, the Olympics, I'm close. I'm lifting, like I'm lifting some of the heaviest numbers out there in the world. I know I can make it. I had all the belief in myself that I can make it, but ended up injuring my back pretty severe in 2014. So, and it ended up going downhill for weightlifting from there. Like I ended up injuring my back. Then I had to take a year off from Olympic lifting because, any type of snatch, clean and jerk, deadlift, squat I did, it really hurt my back. And I had to do supplemental exercises to work around it so I didn't hurt my back as much. So, I ended up taking a year off where I didn't compete, and I had to do training very light. But when I took that year off, I got back into it again, but my numbers that I was lifting, the snatch and clean jerk, wasn't even that close. And I knew that this wasn't good. And it was 2015, at the middle of 2015, and I wasn't lifting the numbers I used to lift. And 2016 was right around the corner, and it just ended up not working out. Where I was like, oh, I had a lot of self-doubt, and I just knew that man, I know I'm gonna have to do something to make the 2016 Olympics, but it just, with my back injury and trying to play catch up, it was very, very hard. So with that said, when I got my back injury, I got kicked off the weightlifting team at Boise State University because they couldn't help me anymore, and they couldn't provide the training that I need, and they couldn't give me the support I needed to pursue on. And so basically after I ended up, end up not being on the Boise State weightlifting team anymore, I had to, I end up, quitting, and I was basically on my own, and I didn't know what to do from there. So I thought okay, I'll just make this unattached. I will try to make the Olympics without a coach, without any teammates. I will do whatever it takes to end up snatching what I used to snatch and clean jerking what I used to end up clean and jerking. So that didn't end up working out. It was really hard to be training for the Olympics without a coach. That's really difficult. So I end up training for a good couple of months, but by the time the end of 2015 ran around, I just knew that I was out of time, and that there's no way I could have made the 2016 Olympics. I knew it was out of my cards at that point. So that's when I ended up, moving on and just thinking maybe weightlifting is not for me. I trained, I gave it my all. I had a great run at it, but it just seemed like it didn't work out because, I went from Louisiana to Boise, and I still couldn't get the training and the support that I need and the coaching that I needed. And, I ended up getting hurt. So I just, I was like, oh man, I don't want to give up. But at the point when I was on my own and trying to train for the Olympics, I was like, man, this is impossible. You need some sort of guidance. So, I was training, and then I wanted to take a little small vacation. So I ended up going on a vacation it wasn't that big vacation, but I ended up visiting my sister here in Utah, and she lives in Spanish Fork, Utah. And I ended up going on a visit to see my sister. And so this is where the cheerleading began. I had no desire of ever doing any type of partner stunting or didn't really know what cheerleading was. I was a little familiar with it, with cheerleading, because my sister did it. And, I'd go to football games and basketball games. I'd always see the cheerleaders do it. So I was a little familiar with what they did, but not really into it. So I ended up visiting my sister, and then I looked at that there's an open gym. They had open gyms for like partner stunting, and I knew of partner stunting, and I just thought it'd be something fun to do. So I ended up going into an open gym in Sandy, Utah, called Utah Extreme Cheer, and I ended up going there, and all I thought was like, I'm just gonna stunt. I know of it, but not super familiar with it, and I ended up going there and stunting. And then sure enough, like, this is when the instant transformation where I went from Olympic lifter into partner stunter. So basically that night where I went to open gym, there was a couple of people that cheered at Weber State. His name is Dane Lobdell, and he's the guy that basically found me and introduced me into cheerleading. And if it wasn't for him, I'd probably still be doing Olympic lifting or trying to make a comeback, So Dane Lobdell is the guy that showed me, like, talk to me, and like he kind of recruited me into saying like, hey, you should try cheerleading. So sure enough, I was partner stunting that night. I had very bad technique. I was muscling the girls I was stunting with, zero technique, just kind of having fun, and just didn't think anything of it. And I just kind of wanted to do it just for like a, just a good workout. So that night when I met Dane told me like, hey, who are you? Like, what are you doing here? And I just said like, I'm a weightlifter at Boise State University. I'm visiting my sister, and I'm just here just stunting, just having a good workout. And he's like, do you want to, have you ever thought about cheerleading in college? And I'm like, no, like, that never has crossed my mind. Like, that's something I've never thought of ever doing in my entire life. So he told me a little bit about it, and he said like, you should think about it, man. Like, cheerleading in college is not a bad thing. Like, it's actually pretty hard. And not only that, like, you compete nationally. There's international with like Team USA, and then you can compete partner stunt competitions. And he said there's also scholarships too. I was like, ooh, scholarships, like, that really sparked my mind. And he's like, what, you think about it, like, let me know. Like, he's like, I'm a cheerleader here at Weber State University, and we have one of the best, at least on the west side, north side, we have one of the best cheer programs, in the nation at Weber State. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. Instantly, no way, I'm not going to cheerlead. Like, I worked so hard in Olympic lifting that I wasn't going to instantly transfer to cheerleading. So I was like, there's no way. So sure enough, I thought about it, and then I decided to go to another open gym, and this time it was held in Ogden, Utah. That's where the Weber State Wildcats were located. So basically, like, when I went to that open gym, I stunted again that night, and I was stunting with some of the Weber State girls. And the first girl I stunted with from Weber State, her name was Tasha Hadfield, and she was such an angel. She was so patient with me. Like, she's the girl that like helped me like learn a lot about partner stunting. And I had very sloppy technique, but she was still very patient with me. But she's one of the very first girls I stunted from Weber State, and she, it was great. She helped me out, and then had a great stunt night that night. And I think I hit my first like front handspring up Cupid like clean with her that night. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that was so easy. Like, cause I applied like all the Olympic lifting I've done in my life, and I applied it to partner stunting. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff, Olympic lifting and partner stunting are so similar. Like, that was crazy. Just how the explosiveness is and how the quickness I used. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So sure enough, I went to like, I had that open gym, and then it was such a great night. And then I ended up talking to the coach at Weber State, and her name's Summer Willis. And not only she was the coach for the Weber State Wildcats, she's also the coach for the Utah Jazz stunt team. So I ended up talking to her, and she's like, we lost 3 guys on the team. We would love to have you on the team. And I'm like, you just let me walk on? Like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're strong enough. Like, you would learn really fast. And then I thought about it, I'm like, okay, and she's like, there's also, there's scholarship. You would end up getting a scholarship, and you would compete with us, and you'd like accomplish some of the cheer aspirations you have. And she's like, what's some of your cheer aspirations? And I said, I'd love to compete at a partner stunting competition. I've seen videos of those and I think they're amazing. She's like, you would easily do that. Then sure enough, I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting my mind in a different direction of like my life right now, and just seeing like maybe it's time to flip the chapter of Olympic lifting and go into partner stunting or cheerleading. And then I talked to my parents about it, and then sure enough, I was like, all right. They're like, is this something you want to do? Do you want to switch from Olympic lifting to cheerleading? And I was like, I had my shot for the Olympics. I ended up getting my back injury and it didn't work out. So I was like, I have nothing else to lose. So I ended up making the transition from Olympic lifting to cheerleading, and I transferred from Boise State University to Weber State University, and basically the rest is history. Ever since like I transferred to Weber State University, so many things came up, like so many opportunities, and so many things in my life happened that I did not expect happening, like competing at UCA for partner stunt and NCA for partner stunt, and then end up winning 2 national championships with Weber State, and then end up trying out for Team USA and competing this year. Never thought in my life this would happen.
I want to ask you, knowing now that this huge transition that you made. I mean, that's a big thing, right? You leave a sport that basically kind of gave you your identity, and using the things in that sport in something new. I mean, I can only imagine, just mentally having, some inner turmoil, or like, I don't want to give this up, but then then you kind of like, well, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be able to do cheer as good as you've done it. But there's some things that you mentioned that I want to touch on and ask about. I know you mentioned the records in high school. How many? How many records total and like achievements total do you have between like records you've set, competitions you've won, etc.? Like what's kind of like your CV or your list of your accomplishments?
Oh man, okay, so going from if we're talking about weightlifting, like we talked about, like I said, I end up I have over 30 records in my high school, Salmon High School, and then I believe I have over 10 records in Idaho State. Like I have state records in Idaho. I have 10 of those, and then I've won 3 national competitions for Olympic lifting. I've won an AAU competition, junior nationals, and then collegiate nationals, and then for international, I won the competition in Reykjavik, Iceland, where that was an international competition, and I won that one. And I would say those are my biggest accomplishments I have in Olympic lifting. And, just having the title of being an Olympic hopeful was like also a big thing too. And so those are some of my biggest accomplishments in Olympic lifting, and, something I will cherish forever, and, be happy that I had those memories and had a good shot at the Olympics. So but those are some of my biggest accomplishments.
About cheer, can you tell us about the accomplishments that you've gotten, and whether or not it's it doesn't have to be necessarily you got a victory in this or that, but just some of your biggest achievements in cheer.
Oh, and cheerleading, yeah, man. So I would say obviously Team USA, competing with them, that's probably my biggest accomplishment, was competing with Team USA and winning the ICU World Championships. That was really big and such an honor. And then winning with the Weber State Wildcats in 2017 and 2018. That's with the Weber State Wildcats, they only won 3 national titles, and the first one was in 2009, and then almost took a decade to win again. And then I was on the 2017 team with them and the 2018 team with them. So winning 2 national titles with the Weber State Wildcats, that's also a big accomplishment. And then, just I would say like having the opportunity to compete at UCA partner stunt and NCA partner stunt, that's something I'd never thought I I would ever be doing. So I would say those were great accomplishments as well.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, you've definitely got, you've got quite the history,
Thanks,
in your
man.
time in cheer, and these are big wins. I mean, these are big victories that a lot of people aspire to, and it's amazing to think that, we look at your transition and your time in the sport, so to say, and it's almost like you were, like you had it in you the whole time, and we just got lucky enough as fans of yours, we got lucky enough to see, get to see it happen. And I just it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think about, if you hadn't have taken that time to go in the gym that day, man, we wouldn't have been able to witness the success that you've had. So, one of the things that you and I talked about a little bit before we started the interview was, our goal, my goal, I feel like my hope before I leave this earth is to try to give back to the sport in a way that hasn't been done before, and to help build better cheer athletes. With this talk of us being in the Olympics, in the next few years, and getting this huge international spotlight that's shined on us, as a provider that takes care of athletes on a daily basis. There's injuries and there's things in cheer that I see way too often that are honestly, man, are so easy to prevent. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is strength and conditioning, making sure that we're actually building our body up to be able to do these activities. So, on our podcast and on our blog and our website, we talk a lot about, programming for strength and conditioning. Can you, as someone who was a record-holding weightlifter, can you, give us a little bit of insight from somebody who has used those exact things that we're, trying to instill in our athletes, how that made you better, and how you feel about its role in creating well-rounded athletes?
Yeah. So you're asking like how like Olympic lifting or just strength training in general is going to help future athletes for cheerleading?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And just as because you're in the thick of it. I mean, you're right there in the trenches. So you see the evolution of the sport currently as it's happening from, kind of from the inside out. So looking at how the sport's growing and the demands of the athletes, talk to us about how that strength and conditioning component, how that benefits our cheer athletes.
Oh, dude, yeah, it really does. So, depending on your position in cheerleading, it really plays into like a role of what type of training one should be doing. So, basically, there's stumblers, there's tumblers, and there's stunters. So, I would say for a person that's just big, you can't really flip that well. Obviously, tons of explosive lifts are very beneficial. And not only that, it's like you have to be stable as well. Like you got to be able to, throw a girl very explosive and then catch her and not hold. And that's where the snatch and clean jerk, where suits it perfect, where you end up like doing a snatch and you have to use a lot of explosiveness, and then you catch the weight and you have to stay nice and tight. Same thing as like throwing a girl into a rewind or a 1-to-1 or a double up. Like you have to use a lot of explosiveness and then catch her and stay tight so you don't walk under her, or you feel nice and stable like for her when you're holding her above your head. And then, for like tumbling, I would say Olympic lifting and just like strength training is very beneficial for tumbling, because not only like you're putting your body through all sorts of different positions that, can really hurt, like from what I read and what I studied about tumbling, it's very unnatural to do a lot of these tumbling movements. So not only like Olympic lifting is really good for the explosiveness for like a tuck or a full or the speed of running pass, but it also prevents a lot of injuries as well. Like if you implement like strength training into your your cheerleading or just like outside of cheerleading, it's going to prevent like so many injuries from all the tumbling passes that you do, all the partner stunts you throw, and not only that, like pyramids and baskets. So that's what I really love about like the Olympic lifting and strength training behind cheerleading, not only it gets you like better for your sport and it makes you like so much faster, quicker, stronger, explosive, but also prevents so many injuries. And that's one thing like people are constantly battling nowadays, especially on my team and other teams I've seen. Like people are always having ankle injuries, knee injuries, shoulder injuries. It's like not only that, like they say like, man, I just did this, I hurt myself tumbling, I hurt myself stunting this girl. But I just said like, man, if I knew, like if you threw some strength training behind you, you would avoid so many injuries. So that's what I was very fortunate enough. Like I stunt, all the time, and it's in my training regimen a lot, but I incorporate tons of strength training, not only for the performance, but for the protection as well. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Absolutely. And it's a lot of, for our listeners that aren't, 100% sure, or aren't fully aware of, what Kollin means when he's talking about, like Olympic weightlifting. So you're talking about the snatch and the clean and jerk are two barbell movements that are done. But the thing about them and what I see, on a clinical standpoint is most of our cheer athletes have kind of a similar build. They have, super strong quads. They have super tight hip flexors. They have weak but flexible hamstrings, weak and not really well functioning glutes, and they have an overextended lumbar spine or lower back. So when you look at a sport like Olympic weightlifting, I mean, it's the majority of it, at least in the beginning of the movements, are all posterior chain. It's a lot of, it's a long pull. You're staying over the bar. You're pulling the weight. It's not pressing the weight off the floor. You're literally kind of making your body a whip, and you're kind of accelerating the bar off the floor using low back, your posterior chain more than anything. And so, I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, if we got all these athletes that are anterior chain dominant and posterior chain weak, and we add something as simple as Olympic weightlifting exercises, not a super crazy complicated routine, but literally just how can we pepper in some snatch and clean and jerk into a weightlifting training routine. And I'm right there with you, man. I truly feel that is a very easy way to eliminate the knee injuries, the shoulder injuries, the low back injuries. And then even on top of that, we have found in the data and the literature that's out, if you have weak glutes, you're more likely to have an ankle sprain because of the instability component. So now you're talking about protecting against ankles by lifting weights, right? So I think that, I definitely think there's something there, and having somebody like yourself who has a history in those, in both fields, and helping to bridge that gap, I think is going to be huge. And I hope is a big kind of push for our male athletes and honestly our female athletes. I mean, the coaches at West Georgia that we interviewed a couple of months ago, they use CrossFit to train their entire team, guys and girls, and obviously there's a big component of Ollie and CrossFit. So having, big players like yourself in the sport that are kind of guiding our athletes towards that, I think is going to really make a huge difference, bigger than we even think of just, hey, let's get stronger. I think it's really going to evolve the sport. So knowing that you've had all these achievements so far, kind of a two-part question is, what do you want to achieve in the future? What's your guiding, your guiding light that you're working towards, and it can be something, specific, like a certain championship or whatever, but kind of what's something you're looking to achieve in the future? And then secondarily, what's the biggest motivating factor that's keeping you working towards that?
Gotcha. So I would say like one thing I'm trying to strive for cheerleading is, I would love to just use the experience I have with Olympic lifting and the partner stunting cheerleading. And I would love to, do what some people are doing right now. And I would just love to go around the world and, coach. That's one thing I really love doing. And that's one job I have right now is I'm a coach at the moment. So that's one thing I'd love to go around, not only the world, but just around the nation and, help people and teach people that, if you implement strength training, Olympic lifting into your exercise routine, it's going to make partner stunting so much easier. And not only that, help people get that full understanding of how to do stunts and perform stunts and have a good mindset when training, because a lot of people, they have when they stunt, they expect a lot right away versus building up in stepping stones. So that's one thing, is just I'd love to go around and coach around the nation and the world for cheerleading. And obviously Team USA, that's one thing I'd love to keep doing, is keep going out and performing with Team USA as long as I can, as long as my body can handle it. That's one thing I'd love to keep doing. But, just try to reach, extend cheerleading out as much as possible before I call it good. And if it does make the Olympics, I would be accomplishing my dream, that I've been striving for with Olympic lifting, but now with cheerleading. So if cheerleading end up going in the Olympics, it didn't end up working out with Olympic lifting, maybe it'll work out with cheerleading. So that's also a goal I'd love to go for, would be an Olympian for cheerleading. So that would be such an awesome goal. And the second question, to answer that, I would say my biggest motivation factors, are the people that motivate me, is definitely my family. My family, they have been with me through this crazy journey I went through, every stepping stone, every stair I took, every ounce of pain, tears, blood I went through. They've been with me the whole entire time. And, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So they inspire me to keep pushing forward and know that it's okay to fail, because, it's normal to fail. We're supposed to fail. So, my family is definitely always supportive, and they always motivate me to keep chasing my dreams, and just they tell me that anything's possible, so that's one thing that motivates me. It's definitely my family. They've never let me down, and I'm not going to let them down. So I would say family is definitely one thing. They definitely motivate me to be the best I can be.
That's awesome, man. That is so,
yeah.
That's so cool. It's, every athlete is motivated by different things, but, having that in the back of your mind and knowing that, you've got this great support network, and the cool thing in cheer is, we joke mm-hmm. about the crazy cheer moms and the crazy cheer dads and things, but and at the end of the day, I mean, how awesome is it that we have parents that get that involved with their kids, that they're that supportive.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it wasn't for the parents, who's gonna drive us to practice? So,
exactly.
So tell me, I just want to tell our listeners, if you have not yet followed Kollin on social media, I'm gonna take a 5-second pause right here. Go find him, and we'll give you a second, and we'll let you go and pull out your Instagram or get on YouTube. Let's take a second. Let's find, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to understand the level of athlete that we're talking about here, okay? So by now you should have found him on social media. So you have the incredible ability to do stunts that don't even seem plausible. The one I just saw most recently on your Instagram, you're doing a hand-to-hand, but it was a one-handed hand-to-hand up to Cupid, right? I've seen some of your rewind and handspring variations where you're doing a back handspring up to hand, and then I've seen mm-hmm. one where you did, God, I don't even know what you would call it. It was almost like a rewind, but you started on the side and you used her leg as a lever and you flipped her up. It was almost like a side summy rewind, and then you stepped under. I mean, so you have these crazy things. First of all, how do you come up with it? And second of all, out of all the things that you can do, which, I mean, let's be honest, arguably, I don't think there's anything you couldn't do. What's your favorite stunt? When you're if somebody were I want you to show me the video of a stunt that truly shows off your skill, what would that be?
Man, that's a hard question, because, stunting is something I truly love, and there's so many stunts out there that, I really love doing. I would say it depends on the fire, but if I did have to choose a stunt that it's kind of like my go-to stunt, it would definitely be, I would say, double ups. So double ups are something I love throwing, and it looks very flashy. And then when you catch a perfect grip, the double up is where the girl spins twice and then you catch her. And the reason why I love those is because it looks very flashy. It's very fast, and when people see it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, was that two spins?" So I would say double ups. Definitely that's definitely one of the stunts I really love throwing.
For
But
sure.
not only that, yeah, like not only that, another one that like matches my love for double ups are shotgun rewinds.
Okay.
So basically, you're in hands.
Yep.
Then you throw the girl, and she does a backflip, and she lands back on you. And the reason why I love those because they're extremely hard to do.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they come down really hard. And I end up like, I love challenging myself. Like, like, can I catch this girl to the top with my arms extended? If I do that, I'm going to try to go catch her with one hand, which I've done a couple of times.
There's only a couple of guys out there, yourself included, that have successfully done shotgun rewinds. One of the first ones, if not the first one to get it on video, was Mitch Budlong from Kentucky. He cheered back when Jason Keogh was there. And Keogh was, for the listeners and those that may not know, Keogh was the first one to hit a 2-girl single arm rewind together. So I remember. And then he did the double TikTok heel stretches. But on that same video, that skills video, Mitch did I think it was a toss QP and then open up extension shotgun rewind QP, and caught it at the top, and it was locked. I mean, it was incredible. And so when I was scrolling through and I saw yours, I'm like, holy crap, I haven't seen anybody do this in like 10 years. That's honestly, I'm 100% honest with you. I never did that stunt, but it was one of my favorite stunts. Just any shotgun variation, that and like, back in the day, like the kamikazes, where you kind of girl falls and then you catch her before she hits, and you do like a Superman and kind of rewind back up. Those are always really those flashy visual stuff. That shotgun's it's a cool stunt, man. What I know we talked about your back injury, and if that is the answer to our next question, that's perfectly fine. But if not, I'm curious, what's the biggest challenge that you've ever had to overcome?
Oh yeah, so yeah, basically what you just said, but yeah, it would just my biggest challenge, man. It was definitely injuring my back. Like when I just remember, oh my gosh, Travis, I can't even describe to you how much pain it was like when I injured my back and on that training day. Like, so basically what specifically happened when I was during that training day was I was lifting some sort of crazy numbers like out in training. I was lifting like way like super heavy that day. That was part of the training program, and I was doing like 5 sets of 5 with 500 back squat. Then right away I had 4 sets of 50 pounds front squat, and then 4 sets of 30, 4 sets of 5 reps with 430 on the deadlift. So I was lifting well over 400 pounds and 500 pounds that day. So I was lifting that training day. It was miserable, but I would say like it was on a deadlift where I injured it. And I just remember when I tweaked it, I felt a very severe, sharp pain in my back. And I end up wrapping a belt around my waist and as tight as I could. And I finished out the training session. And then when I took off my belt, I just remember crumbling to the floor and my back felt like there was a knife in it. So not only that, that was definitely one of the biggest injuries I went through. I had like concussions here and there, but that back injury is something I will remember forever. And not only that, that took me away from, my goal, my dreams, making the 2016 Olympics, just because of that back injury. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing I had to battle in my life was the mental aspect of fighting the thoughts of quitting Olympic lifting. And, not only that, just like finding the motivation to get out of bed and, keep wake up and eat food and still try to force myself to go train, not like just around my back injury. So I would say that was the biggest mental battle I've ever went through in my life was, knowing that I had to Olympics around my hand, and just letting it go just because of my back injury. And oh man, like Travis, I can't even describe like how much pain the back injury was, but not only the pain of like the back, but my mentality too. Like it was so close. I was so close of making it, and then just instantly in a flash, just one lift took it away. So, that's probably the biggest challenge I've ever went through my life. But it's weird. It's also like, if it wasn't for that back injury, I would have never gotten introduced to cheerleading and where I'm at with cheerleading at the moment. So it was also like it was a disaster, but it was a disaster blessing, because it led me into another thing.
Out of tragedy comes triumph, and and your work ethic speaks loads to why you've had the success you've had in cheer. You put the same mindset that you put towards something that Olympic caliber athlete training. I mean, and I think that's a big underlying thing that I want our athletes to take away is that mentality of relentless pursuit of your goals and the work ethic that goes with it, and knowing that you have to put forth effort when other people aren't. You have to work when people are resting. You have to do the things that others aren't willing to do to get to the place that they can't get to. So I think it's cool knowing that you have, as an athlete, you already had that mentality, and all we had to do is we shifted it, and now we see it getting you into a sport where that injury is not, you're able to get past that injury and still use all the skills you had is huge, man. And it's so crazy. I got like mixed emotions listening to your stories. Like on one side, as a provider that treats sports injuries, I'm like, God, I wish I would have known you. I wish I could have seen you and fixed you at the time. And then now the other part of me is like, I'm kind of glad I couldn't, because now we've got one of the best cheer athletes in the world came out of a back. So I'm torn. But no, man, that's an awesome story, and I think that a lot of our cheer athletes can relate to your story, and some of the injuries that they may have had, and trying to figure out like, what do I do, and is this going to change my career and this and that. So I think that hearing someone that's as high caliber as you are can make it through an injury like that and still be successful is super beneficial for the younger athletes. So
thanks.
All right, man. So nobody gets out of an interview without the lightning round questions, and
Sweet.
You are definitely not getting out of it either. So these are going to be.
All right, let's go.
These are going to be completely random, and you have to answer as quickly as possible. You can't think about them too much. All right. What is the most money you have ever spent at a McDonald's in one sitting?
I would say about $20. $20.
That's a lot of McDonald's food.
Yeah, man, I was hungry that day.
All I read about nowadays is how the ice cream machines are always broken, and apparently that's like a huge thing now. People get frustrated. I guess the ice creams, they're always like cleaning it, I guess. Have you ever? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, second one. Who was your favorite Power Ranger?
Oh, the Power Ranger. Definitely the white Power Ranger. I don't know what his name is, but I remember watching I think it was Battles of Heroes. It was the white Power Ranger versus Scorpion, and the white Power Ranger, like Scorpion off of Mortal Kombat, and the white Power Ranger whooped his butt. So I was like, yep, he is my favorite Power Ranger.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the white Ranger was Tommy, I think, or Jason. I think it was Tommy or Jason. And the guy that played the White Ranger went on to become like an MMA professional fighter. Like he was I think he did like Taekwondo or karate before the Rangers, and then he got out and started doing MMA. He turned into this like just awesome fighter.
Yes, I remember reading something about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now, like, I think they did with this relaunch of this movie, I think I saw something, they brought back a lot of the old Rangers in for like a scene or something like that. So I don't know.
Really?
Maybe I have to go watch that movie. Okay.
Heck, I'm down.
Next question. What is your favorite kind of cookie?
Chocolate chips. Definitely chocolate chips. I could eat those for days.
Oatmeal raisin makes me so angry. That's why oatmeal raisin is why I have trust issues.
Yeah, there should be no fruit in a cookie. It has to be enjoyable, you know.
Exactly.
You can eat fruit on your off days or just outside of. But a cookie is something like, all right, I'm going to cheat a little bit, you know.
No, absolutely. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Do you think Zac Efron is really nice in real life, or do you think he walks around with his abs out telling people to fetch vegetables?
From what I've seen, I think he's a pretty nice guy because I've seen the movie Baywatch. That's the last movie I've seen, and I know he's like shirtless all the time in that movie. But from the interviews he's done, I think he's a nice guy. But you know, that's also an interview, so he could be acting, but
that's true, man.
He could be. I think he's a nice guy from the interviews, just based off the interviews.
We'll pray that he's a nice guy. So I usually do 4, but I'm gonna ask you one more only because I'm just letting you know ahead of time. I'm gonna intro and tell people about this, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and talk a little bit about it now. If you had to describe yourself using a Disney character, who would you use?
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's a really, really hard one to think about. I mean, I can't think about that one at all. So a lot of people told me I look like this guy from this movie called Moana, and I was like, I don't see a resemblance at all. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. No, I'm totally joking. Definitely Maui. Like Maui, I've definitely heard so many people say like, hey, has anyone told you look like Maui from Moana? I'm like, nope, never heard that before. But no, all the time, every day basically. And yeah, surprisingly, done birthday parties, dressed up as Maui. And I know the song "You're Welcome" by heart. I could sing it to you like on the spot. Yeah, like on the spotlight. If I had to, I could sing you that song. But I've done it for birthday parties, and man, I remember getting covered in paint a couple times, just acting, getting like the tattoos going. But yeah, so yep, definitely Maui. Look like him.
That's awesome, man. Well, and I will definitely we're gonna. That's one of the reasons why I wanted everybody to find you on social media so they could see you look just like Maui. So, well, man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. And I truly hope that, that we can get you back on, as your career continues to evolve. And, I know your goals of wanting to coach, and travel the world and do things, hopefully there's something in the future where, we can even collaborate on some stuff and use your knowledge of weightlifting and building our athletes.
Yeah, absolutely, Travis. And yeah, man, thank you so much for having me on the show. I had a great time. This was such a great experience. And yeah, I hope the listeners enjoy my story, and I appreciate all the questions. It was so much fun being on your show, and I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely, man. And we'll definitely connect and see if we can't get an update here in a few months and see how things are going.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to check out thecheerdoc.com for more content. Also, if you found the material today valuable, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It's very much appreciated. Thanks for listening, and have an incredible day.